Ce is hallo?
Blijven.
Bist du sicher wegen dem?
Joi itinicho.
Sitaki ubenza, anika sirikie.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
And we're live.
Yes, semi-alive.
Yeah, you got COVID.
Yep, I'm coming to you with the extra added bonus of COVID in my body. So if my voice doesn't sound like its usual beautiful dulcet tones, it's because there's a foreign entity trying to take over my immune system.
Man, that's beautiful. That is crazy.
I'm doing pretty good.
You've tested positive for about a week now, right?
Yeah, it's been exactly 7 days as of the moment of this broadcast.
Wow.
I took a test on Friday and I was still positive.
Dang. Did you take one today?
I haven't taken one today yet.
Was it a strong positive on Friday?
How do I know? It's the little red line came up.
That's true. It's a good point.
It doesn't have like, you're kind of caught COVID to you got COVID to, oh my God, dude, are you really alive?
Yeah. Doesn't it do that? You have COVID in your little toe, but the rest of you is fine.
Yes. Just don't pick your nose with your little toe.
Exactly.
You know, what's funny, or what's interesting is for 2 years, I was like really dreading this whole thing. And I was surprised when I finally tested positive how little fear I felt.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. You know, I heard on the news yesterday that is it the CPC? Is that what they are?
The CDC.
CDC.
The Centers for Disease Control.
Okay, so the Centers for Disease Control announced that COVID's with us. It's not going away. It's going to be a part of life like the flu. And it's just not so extreme anymore because everyone's either vaccinated or has had it. So the immune systems are up. And that's what they were saying.
Yeah, well, I haven't felt this bad since my late 20s. I remember one winter getting really sick. At the time, I was much more of a hellion. And so instead of like tapping down my activity when I got sick, I kind of just kept going. And I ended up getting a little bit of walking pneumonia, which was, you know, definitely feverish and a lot of coughing and stuff like that. Wow. So this is the closest it's felt to that. And, you know, I basically stopped heavy activity within like 24 hours before I got the test because I could feel my body. I was like, oh, something's wrong.
Shit, you know what? We got to pause. My mom's dying, and this is my sister calling me.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey. How you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay. All right.
How are you doing?
Okay.
All right. So just for my clarity, we're all in the same boat. She's passing and wants to pass peacefully and comfortably.
Yes. At her place.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm really glad that I got to see her.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything comes up.
Yeah. So, in speaking with the doctors, it'll be not long.
Okay.
And that's my hope is that it won't be long.
Yes, I agree.
So,
yeah.
That's what we need prayers for. Okay.
Perfect. All right.
All right.
All right. I love you.
Love you too. Talk do it.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.
All right. Maybe we'll just let this roll. So
Yeah, apparently
prayers.
that's what you did. It all just went out live to wherever
Yeah.
live is, and then it's all happening here. Wow. Well,
Yeah. So we're all praying that she passes quickly. She's definitely passing.
so August 15th, that's the same day my mom died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is today the 15th?
Well, it will be when
It
this
will be. Yes. Wow. That's kind of wild.
It is weird. I didn't realize that this was also a potential context for what's happening. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's about what I expected. I'm good. Hell, I don't know. Yeah, there's a kind of thing that takes over. There's like a little bit of distance between what's really happening and your cognitive ability to actually say and accept it. I get that.
Well, the past 72 hours have been very impacted. And part of it has been me not really liking myself and looking at that. And I just spoke with a friend this morning, and this person's really in a very psychotic state, I would say, and it stems from them not liking who they are. And so, what occurs, like one of the things I thought about was, okay, I want to get in better shape. I've gotten out of shape the past month and a half and haven't really been exercising. And this morning I just did not work out, and part of what happens is I tell myself, well, I'll work out at noon. Like it's gotten too late and this and that. And then, if I don't do it first thing in the morning, it doesn't happen. And so I think turning 60, my mom passing away, and looking at my life, and she lives in Nicaragua, as you know, and my sisters are down there. So part of me looking at myself is looking at how my sisters have created a life where they can bounce and be down at our mom's side as she's passing. And I've created a life where that is not plausible.
So you're converting that into a story about how you don't like yourself.
Right.
Yeah. I hear that.
It's mighty whitey.
Yeah, it is. I can't help it. I'd say that there's deeper levels of emotion in something like this. And I don't think your mom would want to contribute to you self-loathing.
No, she absolutely would.
Yeah.
I know that. And I just saw her, like, kind of what's very cool about the technology we have today is we just did a quick FaceTime. And so right before we started recording, my mom and I. So in a way, we've said goodbye to each other. And
so since you brought it up, I'll speak on this. My mom had cancer and she lived in Washington State, which is a assisted suicide state. And so I went to visit her about 10 days. I was there for about a week, about 10 days before she died, or a week before she died. And then, of course, when I got back home, it was she had decided that she was going to use the assisted suicide, and she had a plan, and there's rules about it. And so I was actually witness to her demise via teleconference. So I was in real time experiencing it with my family who were there. I had gone up, and then they were second to come up. There was a lot of drama in the family at that point around it, but this idea of using technology to connect includes, the joy of being together and the ability that has, but it also brings us closer to our grief, right? And I remember, there was a thing where she wasn't sure if she waited that she'd be able to self-administer. And that's one of the criteria, is you have to be able to self-administer or you can't do it. And she was worried she was going to slip into a coma and then therefore be kept alive because she wouldn't be able to self-administer. So we were there. I was there via technology, and she was with my sisters, and she wasn't on camera. She was already very uncomfortable that day and not really wanting to talk to people, but my sisters were there. And so they went, she went back into the room with her husband, and there was a nurse there, and she had a chore, and the chore was she had to drink all of this medication. You couldn't not drink all of it because it was really important that you get the full amount in order for it to be humane in the way that you passed. And that happened in real time on August 15th, 8 years ago. And I remember my wife wasn't home at the time. And it was difficult. It was very difficult for my family and I. And then my sister, a couple days later, she came through the Bay Area down from Washington, and we spent a couple days together in our grief. So just remembering that and remembering the emotional roller coaster, the waves of grief that came over me, and the support that I had, and how for years it still catches you. The grief just sneaks up on you, and you're not ready for it. And I would just want to encourage you to be present to whatever shows up for you, and that I'm here for you if you need it. I can't be with you physically, obviously, because I would potentially be making you ill. But I also, I feel for you because I've been through this, and it's not easy. And it's okay if you want to make jokes about it.
Well, the easy part is there's nothing to be done, right? The easy part is death is absolute in the sense that it's in motion and it's going to happen. There is nothing anyone can do to stop that process. So that's easy. It's like water going downhill. There are a lot of thoughts and feelings about how, and even though it's humane, I think it's the most humane choice that's happening for her to pass peacefully, because she had 2 strokes last weekend, and they actually it was like Tuesday, so a week ago Tuesday. It's been anyway, they debilitated her, and she is not one who's going to be happy living a life in a bed. So the humane thing is for her to pass. But it definitely, like this ends. So like anything that was lingering that I thought maybe I could do later, nope. Which is encouraging to act with people now. Let people know that you love them, that you are in your life. Don't wait for dramatic life things to happen.
And sometimes we don't get the opportunity to actually prepare for it and to say our goodbyes. Some people don't get that opportunity. So it's a blessing that you have, the awareness to be able to say to each other, hey, this is it. This is where it ends for us. And to have whatever kind of exchange that goes with that.
Yeah, and it's a strange dichotomy to feel in my body, because like, this is it, the end, goodbye. There's a finality to that. But I also have in my realm of infinity, and as spiritual beings, we continue on. So it's strange to experience finality and then also kind of immediately go to, well, is it really final? Is finality real?
And what's your mom's belief system around all this? Do you know?
She's absolutely one of continuing on. In fact, it's probably been about 25 years ago, she created a video that she wanted as a tool for people. It was called Allies in Transition. Oh, Peaceful Warrior, Allies in Transition. And it was about having a positive death experience, and for the family and everyone involved to be an ally for this person transitioning over. So yeah, it's been a huge. And what's interesting is when, I don't know if Rivka was with her yet. I think she was. Anyway, Rivka and her, no, she wasn't down there yet. So Rivka said it's hard when it's your turn, isn't it? Like, it's easier to be an ally for someone else. It's hard when it's you. And our mom said, yes, it is hard.
Yeah. There's so much grasping, or there can be so much grasping.
Yes.
My mom had really clearly, she had terminal cancer. And there was literally no one in the world who had her cancer that lived. And there were different timing scenarios. Like, some people fought really hard and went through lots of chemo, and they had 5 years. But that group was like 12%. So there was this whole, do I really want to just go through this whole ordeal to have that life experience of struggling and fighting and all of that stuff? And she tried a surgery, and then she also tried her one round of chemo, and then she just decided, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to let it roll. And, this was a deeply spiritually informed position. She had her master's in Buddhist studies by this point, and she'd lived a very full life. She was 70 when she died. And it's interesting to recognize how much she was ready and resigned to it. And that on the day of her choosing to leave this earth, it was a real chore. Like, it wasn't, she had to hold a heavy, it wasn't just a cup. It wasn't like here's a small cup of poison and you're done. It was like a big drink, and she had to drink it all. It was heavy, and it was like, she's tired, and she wasn't right. And she was already on a certain amount of morphine at that point.
So her husband supported her in the process?
Well, in the sense that he was legally bound not to physically be assisting her. She could not, no one could help her drink it, literally, right? She had to be able to actually hold the thing and then drink the whole thing herself. So she had to work really hard to end her own life at that moment. Which is ironic in a sense.
It is, right.
But we all were in total support of it and understood it. And in that sense, it was a choice not to suffer. And to be able to choose that, to have the medical power to choose that, is such an important part of being an ally, a peaceful warrior in transition, right? As your mom mentioned. And I just wish that for her, whatever happens in the next, 24, 36 hours, however long this takes, I really pray that she has the power to move in the direction she chooses to go without suffering.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's,
yeah.
So how about those Niners?
Yeah, it's really hard to try to have the conversation we were planning to have in that sense with this. I think I'm actually much more interested in talking about Death Jester than I am in the NFL right now. Which, for those of you who don't know, was a kind of a mock band that Greg and I and some of our other Bohemian cohorts had kind of dreamed up, poking fun at violent death and heavy metal and stuff like that. But there's a thing that was born out of that experience for me, which was this idea of looking in the face of the inevitable demise of our life with the sense of irony and humor that can come with it. And not necessarily just to escape the pain of it, but to escape the pain of it, but also to remind us of each thing, including the desperation and pain and suffering that goes with death, has the potential to have a humorous element to it. But I'm wondering right now, Greg, whether you feel like that's even possible, given that this is your mother and this is super real for you.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. I think I was looking for the Dylan Thomas poem. Maybe we'll end with it.
Okay.
Do not go gentle into that good night. You know that poem?
I'm aware of it. I don't.
Right.
Saying I know it would be.
That's a good point. Yes, I understand what you're saying. You don't know it by heart. Neither do I. Yeah, I think. I'm sorry, I was looking at the poem. So your exact question, I really did not hear.
Yeah, I'm looking it up.
I'm trying to fake my way through it, but I think humor. And in fact, I think Monty Python. Did you ever see what was their one of their last films, the Meaning of Life?
Yes.
So remember the scene with Death and the salmon moose, like when everyone at the dinner table died. What? We can't all have died. What? The salmon moose.
It's inescapable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Monty Python did an excellent job of poking fun at these elements of life that are so sacred and abhorrent, possibly.
Yeah, well, one of the ways that we have victory over the inevitability of this is to enrich each moment with joy and humor.
Yeah.
And so to laugh in the face of death is somewhat macabre, but it's also a kind of victory of this spirit of the human spirit to be, willing to completely be in denial of all of the sadness and try to be funny.
I just thought of the scene on the crosses of Life of Brian and the famous "Always look on the bright side of life."
Yeah. And there's this real thing, real grief. And if you bypass it, you're missing out on life. You are missing out on something. And it's so abstract until you're the one, until you actually can feel it.
Yeah, that's kind of what it brought to light of when it's my time to die. Will I do so with grace? Will I be afraid? I think it's one of those things that it seems like a lot of people plan for it. But when they get there.
So what has you wanting to be graceful in it? And is that the ego?
It just feels right in my body. It's like, again, the inevitable thing, the easy thing to do is to go with it, like water down a hill. Like I said earlier, it's happening. So fighting it is just so inane.
Yeah. And so you hope that you face it with grace and don't struggle and fearlessness.
Yeah. I mean, the analogy that just came to mind is like standing out in a rainstorm. And you could either just enjoy the storm and get wet, or you could look like a real nut bucket trying not to get wet and just angry at getting wet and all the things that you would do to fight getting wet.
Yeah, there's a kind of suffering that goes with all of that, right?
Right. And it doesn't have to happen. Like, it's just total madness, not suffering.
Well,
That's
and
the inevitable.
I think this brings up a kind of dietary practice question, because what my understanding of when an animal is used for food, there's this idea of kosher. And my understanding of that, as limited as it is that they die without fear.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing, because the way I view the transition is consciousness in the physical body. My understanding is that the awareness of the deceased doesn't dissipate when the body stops functioning. And so there's this perception period when the body's no longer alive. And so if the momentum of that moment has fear and adrenaline in it, then the consciousness also has that kind of experiential element to it after the body dies. And the hope of a peaceful passing is specifically around not having an afterlife experience begin with that level of anxiety and disruption. And it's sort of funny how there's all these things that I could point to that are the story about why I believe there's this consciousness after the body dies. And I'm sure that if Mike Healy were here, he would be like, no, brain stops. There's nothing.
Right. There's a lot of people who, if they were here,
like, nope, that's not how it works. It's just nothing. There's just nothing.
I love that one. Prove it.
Right.
Okay. You shoot them in the head.
But I like to live in the fantasy world that there is this process of awareness that happens after the body passes. And that what some of the reason we have all these religions and spiritual things is because there's been some sort of evidence of that people have become aware of. And so I have all these stories about what's happening during that transition phase. And, you know, there's the whole ritual that the Tibetans do or the Buddhists do with the way that they prepare during the sickness, and they read all these and they have all these mantras and they chant all this stuff. And then when the body finally dies, they continue that. Right. And then in this Jewish practice, there's this sitting Shiva, which I don't really understand fully, but the person's body is still there, right? And in my own explorations of this,
the body's still there in sitting Shiva. I don't think it is. I think it's buried. But the Jewish belief is that the spirit of the person is around for 7 days after death. So any things that were not completed, you have a chance to complete them with this individual.
Right. Which implies a perception that is beyond the body.
Right. Yep.
Right. And in the Buddhist tradition, there's like 90 days after the body dies before the soul actually leaves the karma behind. And so in my mom's case, we didn't have her laying to rest, her celebration of life, until after that period had ended. So there wasn't a funeral within a week. of her death. There was just the celebration of life that happened later that it didn't really have a Buddhist form to it. Like, we just did a thing that was our own way of dealing with it. And we'd had at least the opportunity to discuss what her wishes were about it and what she wanted and how she wanted it to go. And there was a little bit of money available for, to get the place that we wanted. Right. But we didn't do, like, for my grandfather, she did this whole video production for his funeral where it showed his life in a slideshow with music and all that. And we didn't do that with her. We just had something else happen. And one of the things that we had was I had a glass vessel that was basically like a fishbowl, and it had water in it. It was about half full of water. And I had been instructed to put rocks on each of the tables of everyone that attended. And if they were called upon either internally or through, there were a few people that were sort of expected to speak, like me. They were to take the pebble and drop it in the water into the fishbowl.
I thought you were going to say, like, if they were so moved, they could try to break the fishbowl with these rocks that were placed on the table.
No, it was like, here's the pebble dropping in the water, right? The ripple of their expression. And sitting 2 feet from me at this moment is the fishbowl with all of those pebbles still in it.
Oh, wow. Is it empty of water?
Oh, yes, totally empty of water. But it's also, I'm going to go ahead and grab it here. It's also full. Oh, God.
Maybe you're not going to grab
all this other life that I've led since then. Because I've been putting experiences into it. There's my friend Michael, who also has left this plane, right? And so I have all this stuff in here that is
it's like a pinata
of all of the important spiritual pieces of life. And
so when you pass, we can bust that glass bowl. And
I don't think it's going to be this when I do pass, unless it has happened soon. In fact, I've been thinking about, because you can sort of see that in the bottom, there's all the rocks, right? But there's also that, is that a Yoda guitar pick?
There's some coins.
Yeah, there's things that I did, like going to concerts and my business card. And right near the top, there's a tea bag wisdom here. It says, relate to your greatness and not to your weakness. Like,
I like that.
There are things that are in here that mean something to me, and things that
Dave Chappelle ticket in there.
No, but this is the hotel I stayed in Copenhagen with Kathy. And so it's
that's wild.
There's all these different things in here of the experiences I've had in my life that started
Do you ever go through it?
What?
Do you ever go through it?
No, I've just been throwing stuff in, and guess what? There's practically no more room.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe that's all we are. Vessels of memories. And when we get full, it cracks open and we spill out.
Well, then I had my thing in December. So maybe that means I have a whole bunch more life ahead of me now, because all my
you got to refresh. Yeah.
Refresh.
A clean hard drive. Well, at least for 24 hours.
And one of the things that I've noticed about COVID was, like, day 2, day 3, a lot of body aches and stiffness that I had that was just part of my daily, like, physical reality from working so hard at the summer camp and stuff. It went away, and I was like, wow, why COVID feels good.
Wow, that's crazy, because I had the opposite reaction. For 72 hours, my muscles were in pain. Like, I couldn't, oh my God. The muscle pain was crazy off the scale.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep. I would be like laying down, stand up, walk around, and it just like trying.
So what
to
a different experience. What vaccine did you have?
Moderna, funky cold Moderna.
See, I had Pfizer.
That's interesting. I've friend of mine has friends that are deep in the medical field with COVID and things, and Pfizer was their immunization of choice. At the time, from what I researched, Moderna seemed like that's the way I went.
Yeah. And really now what we're talking about is your vaccine is about how you then experience the illness rather than being like thrown in the ICU and possibly dying, which is what was the option for almost a year and a half.
Right. Now we're going to
now-
get flagged too by all the.
Because we're talking about COVID.
Because we're talking about COVID. The disease that we shall not name.
Yes. Well, we are pro-vaccine here, and we are pro-information sharing. So there's no need to ban us. We're not telling anyone not to do anything. Are you getting some info? What's happening?
That's what I'm checking to see if
to see if we are been kicked off Facebook yet.
No. I was seeing if my sister's family was
watching the show while we talk about your mom.
No, if any news just happened with mom.
Yeah. Well, as this unfolds beyond our podcast together, if you need someone to talk to, let me know.
Thank you.
I'm here.
This could be a short episode. I mean, I think we've kind of exhausted. I don't feel like really talking about anything else, and I feel like we've done a really nice job of talking about something we know nothing about.
Well, we're learning, right? I had an experience with my mom.
Yes.
Dying.
I was by my dad's side when he passed away, and it was an extremely spiritual experience. It was as amazingly spiritual as being with Liz and Robin when Robin was born. It really was like, it was an experience. And I think that's part of when you were talking earlier about, you were saying something about spiritual practices, etc. And I think part of, I've thought a lot about religion. How does it come up? And it'd be like if you did a bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles and you had this amazing experience and it transformed your life.
Which you did.
Like, yeah, but that's, but you're like trying to like, Greg, this is amazing. This will transform your life. And you're like, oh yeah, how? Well, and you start telling me about your experience, but my life isn't transformed because I haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
So it's like you're trying to relay an experience that is transformative to someone, and really the only choice they have is to experience it in their own way. It may not be a bike ride for them. It may be something else. Like everyone's going to experience in their own way the divinity.
Yeah. I agree with the basic idea of what you're saying. And I mean, we run into people through social media or through the media, and we talk about, thoughts and prayers. Like, please hold my loved one in.
I gotta remember something.
Right. And what really comes up for me when I think about holding your mom in high spiritual esteem is this feeling in my chest, this warmth in my chest, because it's very real for me. And the risk when we say something like that is that it feels like a platitude, or it's like a kind of way to bypass the intensity of the moment by saying, oh, I'll hold her in my prayers.
Right, thoughts and prayers. Hey, if you want to see a brilliant stand-up, Anthony Jeselnik, Thoughts and Prayers. Oh my God, Anthony! I don't think it's for Kathy. It's like Andrew Schultz, who you watched a couple weeks ago.
Jeselnik, how do you spell that? Do you know?
Anthony Jeselnik. I don't know. Let's see.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Thoughts and Prayers. I think it's on Netflix. I'm not sure. Oh my God, is he funny? I love that guy. He is so hard hitting, funny, raw. But what you're talking about, he has a bit about thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. So whenever I hear thoughts and prayers, I always picture him, and it always has not the reaction that the person was hoping for.
Well, that's part of why I said it, because so much of that is platitudinal. It feels like a platitude from people.
Right.
It's performative.
Right.
But
right.
if we allow ourselves to just let it sink in a little deeper, we can have another experience of it, which is to honestly and deeply hold reverence for the person. And in my case, I have access to it because your mom gave me a really precious gift, which is you.
That's very sweet.
Yeah. And I really appreciate her for it.
Oh, that's
and so that's a place where I can actually connect, even though I never met her or spoke to her or whatever. And so I have that's where I'm going to live with this as the days unfold or whatever, in that place of gratitude for your presence on the world, for the gift that is, and then all of the other gifts of which I know nothing of her. Just the idea, peaceful warriorship, where you help people, show up in ways that facilitate the passing of someone with the least amount of suffering. I want to know a whole lot more about that, and I hope that I will be able to look at the material she created at some point.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. She definitely was. She was a human being. There are some amazing things about her, and there are some fucking hard things to live with about her.
Yeah.
And I've shared some of them on this podcast we do. And
I remember when I was up visiting my mom and I knew she was going to die, I had some unresolved stuff that I wanted to try to work through with her. And so I said to her, hey, we need to talk about this. This was what you did was fucked up. And she's like, don't even go there. I don't have the energy for this. I'm not going to do this with you. And I'm like, but you're going to leave and I won't have it. And she says, doesn't matter. It's too late. Get over it, buddy.
That conversation, the expiration
it was way shorter than I thought, right? I thought we are going to have a nice long thing where we hash something out. And at the end of that, I felt a little bad about pushing her that way. But I loved how she stuck her boundaries. And she said, no, I'm not available for this.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been thinking about narcissism, and there's this sort of conclusion I have that in a way we're all narcissistic. In a way, we all put ourselves at the center of our processes and thoughts. And so therefore it's so often we can do that without meaning harm. Step into someone's space with what's important to me.
Well, I think that's the thing is most narcissists that are pathological are oblivious as to their impact. And it's not
are they oblivious or do they not care?
Well, yes. To varying degrees of depth. But I think narcissism by definition is the illness, the extreme aspect of it. Whereas enlightened self-interest is actually really a potent form of human leadership. We're friends because of what it does for us. And that's real. Selfishness, enlightened self-interest is not in and of itself egoically toxic, but it's a question of degree. And so narcissism, in the way I see it, is it's gone over into that area where it becomes mutually exclusive of the benefit, the cross benefit, the mutual benefit process. And it becomes geared towards just my own.
Yeah. And maybe in clinical narcissism, the foundation of it is you can't communicate with the person for realization of what's occurred.
Yeah. And in a sense, they are unable to translate that into something that's tenable for both of you.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's sociopathic.
And thinking back on what we've spoken about in this episode, this should have been our Mother's Day podcast.
Wow. Well, it's funny how these things work out, right? We followed the thread of the moment, and here we are. There's one thing that I've spoken about before, which I think is worth mentioning, which is this theory I have and that I was passed on to me by my ancestors, is this idea of kama loka, which is as you pass through the gate of death, you enter into a period of time where you experience everyone's experience of you from their point of view. And you go through your whole life experiencing your impact on people. And then that's part of the soul evolution that goes with moving from this state to the state beyond incarnation into the next pre-incarnation state. And it takes a fair amount of time.
Bummer.
Yeah, it takes a while. It's not like it flashes before your eyes thing. No, that's not my understanding of it.
Who's the producer of that show? I need to.
The other thing that my father suggested is that to read stories to the dead, even if they're not necessarily right there with you physically. I mean, obviously, if you can sit with the body and read stories to it, that they can hear and feel that, and it's comforting.
I think this came up before.
Yeah.
Did you listen to Black Star, David Bowie's last album?
I did, actually. Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah. It's a pretty amazing album.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of what I hope for myself, is that somehow I'm in a place in life that when I pass, it could be a creative process.
Yeah, I hope so too, and for myself and for you. And my hope for you in the next moment and the moments to follow is that you can let go of this need to determine that you are something less than, or that you didn't do it right.
Didn't do it right. Well, that's interesting, because what I'm sitting with right now is this feeling of who I am now and who I want to be, and they're not the same.
Yeah. And that wanting is the cause of the suffering.
Yeah, this could get philosophical real quick, because it's also,
I took it there. It's not your
it's
fault.
also the carrot that drives us to grow.
Yeah. Well, you can motivate yourself without judging that if you don't achieve what you want, you're less than. You can still say, oh, this is where I'm headed. And you can leave aside all of the recrimination and judgment and self-flagellation that is part of our conditioning.
That's interesting, because if I picture myself on a sailboat, and let's say I wanted to sail around from San Francisco to San Francisco around the world. Now, I know that there's going to be all sorts of experiences and things happening, that the path gets changed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if I don't end up in San Francisco and I'm still alive, I feel it was a failure.
So I would then ask you, what about your addiction to the context of failure? Because the idea of you setting out somewhere with a goal and ending up somewhere else isn't necessarily, it's a failure. It's a transformation of the wanting. It's a transformation of what, right? And if you haven't ended up, it's that you didn't actually want to. If you don't make it back to San Francisco, you didn't really want to. So that's not a failure. That's just a shift in what you wanted.
Right, but I don't want the spare tire as part of my body. But
Okay.
when I woke up this morning, I didn't do any physical exercise to change that physical body.
Okay, so if you stop coming from the don't want place and turn that into what you do want, and not in terms of, well, I do want to be skinny, right?
That is harder.
So
that is
what if-
interesting. That's harder for me. It's harder for me to go, I want,
to exercise.
yes, I want a physical body. I want, like, it's easier to go, I don't want a flat third, spare tire.
Right, I get it. And what if what you wanted was just to feel the energy of the exercise, and you disassociated yourself from the idea that meant one thing or another about your spare tire?
That's so interesting, because when you said that, I had this joyful thing in my body of exercise. Yeah, the tape that I play more often than not is exercise.
Right? So that's what the negative reframing does, is it frees you from that. And then exercise isn't about the place it takes you. It's about the exercise, which may or may not take you to that other place, the resolution of the not wanting to be peace, right? But you get to choose how you relate to it. You can be in disapproval of it and motivate yourself from, I want to avoid this disapproval, or you can choose a different way. And neither one is better than the other. I'm not saying, but it's just an option. And the idea of less suffering around what's real seems like a win. So if your desire to get up and exercise has to do with what you don't want to have as a result of not exercising, it seems harder to me than, I want to feel good, so I get up and stretch, or I get up and work out, or whatever.
Right. I'm feeling like I'd like to end this episode. Are you okay if I end it with the Dylan Thomas poem? But I'll change
please.
it and honor our mothers, because he wrote it for his father.
By all means.
You're okay with this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Do not go gentle into that good night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise women at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good women, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild women who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave women near death who see the blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meters and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my mother, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Recording stopped.